So now the topic is access modifier. As we already studied about public and private, that within same class you can access it in public, from the derived class also you can access it, and from outside the class, that is in the main function, we can access public. We already saw that. For private, from the same class we can access it. From the outside class or outside function, that is main function, we cannot access it. From the derived class we cannot access it. So for the protected, these things we're going to see in the inheritance. When you study about inheritance, there we're going to take example of protected access modifier. So this is done. Now we're going to study, that is next topic is going to be constructor. So constructor is a block of code similar to the method, and it's called when an instance of the class is created. What is instance? That is object of that class is created. So whenever object is created, that times the constructor is called. So no need to call the constructor separately. At the time of calling constructor, memory of object is allocated in the memory. Every time an object is created using the new keyword, that time at least the constructor is called. So if I talk deeply about it, C++ allows the object to initialize itself when it is created. The automatic initialization of the object is known as constructor. The constructor in C++ is a block of code that initializes the newly created object. So whenever we create object, that time this constructor is called. Unlike the method or member function, we need to call the member function separately, but constructor is called whenever the object is created. So this line, it is called when an instance of a class is created. Instance of a class means object of a class is created. A constructor initializes an object immediately upon the creation. It has the same name as the class in which resides, and it's syntactically similar to method only. Once defined, the constructor is called automatically immediately while creating the object. Constructor has no return type, even it does not have void also. So in simple words, if I say, we can define the constructor in C++ that are special types of methods of a class that are automatically executed. Whenever we call an object of the class, that time this constructor is called. The constructor are responsible for two things. One is object initialization. So we're going to do initialization of the object, and other one is memory allocation. These are the two things we use constructor for. Now we're going to see what other types of constructor are there. So there are two types of constructor, that is default constructor and parameterized constructor. So we're going to see what is default constructor is. So when we define a default constructor, it means it will have no parameters in it. When I call about parameterized constructor, it is going to have some parameters to it. So these are the two constructors we're going to learn about. Now let's jump to the VS Code and see the examples of default constructor and parameterized constructor and how to do it. So let's jump to the VS Code. Now here we're going to see what default constructor is. Let me create a separate file for that. So I'll create file and write 7 default constructor.cpp. When I say default constructor, it means no parameter is going to have. So what are the rules we studied? That constructor will have the same name as the class name, and constructor will have no return type, that we know. Before that, writing the code, I'll clear the terminal. Alright, this is done. So what I'll do is I'll write the header file for it, #include iostream, and using namespace std, and I'll write the main function for it, int main, and here I write. Alright, now we're going to create a class for that. Suppose we want to store the roll number, name, and marks, whatever obtained by the student. So we're going to create a class named student, and we're going to create the constructor for the student also. I'll give semicolon to it, I'll go above, and I'll write whatever the data members are. So I'll be writing all things in public. So let's write the access modifier as public, and let's give the data member, that is int roll number. All right, this is done. Then I'll give name, string name. This is also done. And after this, what I'm going to write is marks, that is int marks. And after marks, I'll create a constructor. What we said, when you create a constructor, that is going to be same name as the class name. So we'll write student, and I'll give its default constructor. So we're going to write nothing inside this round bracket. That is what default constructor is. And here we'll do the initialization, all the things. Roll number we have, that will be equals to 1 suppose, and name suppose, and that I'm going to write suppose as anu, and other things, that is marks. Suppose marks obtained is equals to 98, and we're going to write that cout statement here. So I'll write cout, and here I'm going to define everything, that roll number is, and what is that roll number, come out of here, and I'll write roll number. All right, and I use next line, that is endl. All right, and after that what I'm going to use is name is, and what is the name, that is in the name data member, right? And after use endl, and we use again here, we'll write marks obtained is, and here we're going to write the marks, and I'll use at the last endl, right? So this is the constructor. We are initializing all the values here. All right, what I said, when we call the function, like when we create the object, that time is constructor is called. We need not to call the constructor as we do for the member function. So what I have to do is, I'll write the data type, that is student, and I'll create object 1, obj 1, and if I write this, so this is what object creation. So when I do object creation, that time the constructor is called, that we already studied in the theory. If I save this code, Control S, and I'll right click here and run the code. If I run the code, now it is automatically printing whatever we written, because we know when we create object, that constructor is called automatically. That is the feature of it. If this was like, if this would have been function, that time we would have been called it. So every time we calling a function. So this is set color function, right? So what we did here, we call that function. This is calling a function, but in case of constructor, we no need to call it. So this is what default constructor is. Now we're going to see the parameterized constructor. So I'll create another file, that is going to name it as, we did default constructor. I'll write 8 parameterized .cpp, that is parameterized constructor we're going to see now. So what we'll do, same thing we do, that I'll hash include iostream. All right, after this is done, I'm going to use the using namespace std. All right, I'll write the main function also hand by hand, int main. I'm going to write this. All right, now what we're going to do is, we're going to write the example for parameterized constructor. So let's take an example that's student only. So I'll create a class name student. Let me create the template for it. I'll write this, I'll come down, I'll give semicolon to it. All right, Now let's give the access modifier here. So I'll give public as the access modifier, and I'll write int roll numbers, let's say, and string name, and I'll give int marks also. All right, this all done. Now I want to create a constructor. That constructor name we know that is going to be student only, and inside that we're going to pass some parameters. That is what parameterized constructor is. If I write int n1 equals to 1, that is we're going to give it as a roll number, and I'll give comma to it, and after that I'll write string n2, that is going to be for name, that is going to be name. Let's say here Amit, my name is there, and after that I'm going to give int n3 equals to, let's say, some value, that is 97 marks. All right, going inside the constructor, I'll write roll number, that is going to be equals to n1. So whatever the value you pass, it will going to pass the value. Okay, now name is going to be getting value from where? N2, and marks is going to get value from N3. All right, so this is the definition of constructor is done. Now we're going to write create object here. So we know whenever we create object, that constructor is automatically get called. So I'll write the data type, that is student, and what I'm going to write is obj1. So this is what object creation is. Here I'll write return statement also, return 0. All right, now this is done. If I save the code, and let me clear this first, clear, and after that I'll run the code. So this is object creation is done. It means this constructor will be called. So before running the code, I have to write the cout statement also. I'll write cout, and here we will give everything, that is what it is printing. So I'll say roll number is, and that is going to be stored in. So what I'll be writing is obj1 dot roll number, that is how we access obj1 dot roll number, that's how we access. Now what I will write here after that is endl, so that we go to the next line. After that we'll say name is, and obj1 dot name, and again we'll give endl so that it looks good, and after that we'll write marks is, and again we'll give here for the accessing obj1 dot marks. So this is done. Now after that, at the last I'll write endl, and I'll write the semicolon to it. Now if I save the code, Control S, and if I run the code, so it is giving roll number 1, name is Amit, and marks is 97. So it is all the values is getting from here. This is what parameterized constructor is. This parameters have been initialized also. Now suppose we want to create one more object for it. Now we want to create one more object for it. So let's create one more object. Let's come here. All right, I pasted it. Now I can give the value here also according to me. Let's say what is there? First is roll number. Let's say roll number is 2. And if I write comma here, and name is going to be, let's say, Anu. And after that, let's say marks obtained is 99. So what it is going to do is I'll change the object from object 1 to object 2, because we're creating second object. So here also we'll be changing to object 2. I'll change it to 2. Here also I'll change it to 2. And here in this line also I'll change it to object 2. So it means what? These values are initialized. when we create this object, that was automatically got called and that printed this result. Now we gave as parameter in the object, we gave parameter this as object, so this value will update for this second object. Let's see what happens. I'll save the code, Control S, I'll right click it and run the code. After running the code, this part section is coming from object 1, and this section you see roll number 2, Anu, and 99 marks is coming from here. So what it is doing is this is overwriting this. So if I created object 2 and didn't initialize anything, same value would have been printed 2 times, because for object 1 this first 3 lines is printed, for object 2 these 3 lines are printed. So here we have passed the values in the object, so it is getting updated from 1 to it is getting updated to 2, from Amit it is getting updated to Anu, and from 97 it is getting updated to 99 for the second object. So you see in the second this is updated values coming for this. So this is what parameterized constructor is. So this is the end of constructors. So we saw the default constructor that no parameter is passed, and in parameter constructor we parameter is passed. So one thing is to take care is though no return type is there, and constructor name is same name as the class name. That is it. So we'll end this constructor topic here. Thank you.